Hi, my name is Barry Sterling Mitchell. I produce the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings, and this is Ben and Barry on football.
Hello out there. This is your co-host. I'm Ben Dickerson. Merry New Year to everyone. Lover of the NFL mostly, but lover of football all around. I won't even talk about my fantasy year this year, but I'm happy that we're ready to get into the playoffs. So let's go.
All right, sir. We are in 2020. Let's say Happy New Year to anyone who happens to take a look at this video. Today is, what's the day? The third? Are we into the third day yet? Or is it
Today's the second.
Second day, January 2nd, 2020, 1/2/2020. And we are looking toward this coming weekend where we have the wild card games being played. That's only 4 games, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. AFC is on Saturday, right?
You know what? I didn't even look at the actual schedule, but normally they do one AFC, one NFC on one day, and one AFC at one NFC on the other day. But that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen.
Well, that's a great question. And I hate to ask myself a great question and then not have the great answer. But it looks that way because Buffalo and Houston are at 4:35 on Saturday. Tennessee and New England are at 8:15 on Saturday.
Oh, so it's all AFC Saturday.
All AFC Saturday, all NFC Sunday. Minnesota and New Orleans are the early game on Sunday at 1:05. And then the Eagles and the Seahawks have the premier Sunday evening 4:40 p.m. game. That's a shot for the Eagles to have the premier game. You got to kind of give it to them a little bit there. We're going to talk about those games in the Bias Plus report, but we're going to start out by looking at normally it's our top 12, and we're going to actually look at the whole 32. We'll talk a little bit about the top 12, but the whole 32 relative to the categories of statistics that we focus in on, especially as we utilize the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings and the Bias Plus reports. So let's get set up here for that. And all right, I think we're actually all ready to go here. How nice. It's always good to be somewhat prepared. And we'll start off with turnover differential. Now, we have the entire 32 teams set up here. First 16 to the left, last 16 to the right. And again, this is one of those statistics that has both negative and positive attributes as you run through. Mr. Dickerson, last 2 places in turnover differential. And again, I have ATD at the top. There should be no A there. It's not average. These are gross numbers for turnover differential. So let's just make sure we realize that. But that's -17 for the Chargers. And dare I say, your New York Football Giants leading the league in turnover, or leading, not leading the league. But
let's not even use the word leading in anything that we're talking about here. That is really poor. But it's just one of those things that we have to clean up on our way to coming back and being a viable NFL team.
We have so much news to talk about relative to coaches. That'll come in our latter commentary portion. Looking at the Bengals and the Panthers, both at -14, the Buccaneers at -13, and the Dolphins at -10. So that kind of tells you why certain teams are where they are. And we can almost thank Jameis specifically for that turnover differential minus number for the Bucks. Anything on that real quick?
Yeah, first thing I want to say is that's not fair. Okay.
Not fair.
Now I feel about Jameis, and he's come under fire lately now that the season's over because of the turnovers. Everybody is really focusing on that. And I'm not going to say that they shouldn't, because it's been horrendous. I mean, the guy threw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, And 30 interceptions is really, really bad. But 30 touchdowns is pretty doggone good. But of course, you know, the media is going to focus on the negative and ask him if he thinks he's going to be around and all that stuff. And he gave a really good answer. And he's not always one to give a really good answer. But he said, if I focus on that and I can clean that up, I can really be great. And he is absolutely right.
What did we say about a week or two ago? Well, what did I say? I said if he can get his turnovers down by 1, he can begin to look viable. 1 per game. We're talking about 1 per game. Okay, that would be 16 less interceptions out of 30. You know,
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
now if you're down to 16, and if you're still throwing 30 touchdowns, and now you're down to 16 interceptions, the money could start flowing Jameis's way. Big time.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Okay. Cleveland, the Browns at -6. I should have these charts in front of me here, because sometimes when I'm looking at this little screen, it really messes me up a little bit. But okay, as you can see on the left side, we'll just go quickly onto the top. Lions, Falcons, Jets. The only playoff team on that side of the board is the Philadelphia Eagles. I took the time to make sure that I included the letters and the playoff indicators for all of the teams, because I wanted people to be able to see the relationship between turnovers and playoffs, winning. So you have the Eagles as the only team. They have a Z. That means they won their division, clinched that playoff spot, bye week, well, they didn't really get a bye week, did they? They wound up with a wild card because of their record, more than likely, right? They had the worst
wild
record.
card because of their record. They clinched their division, which gave them the home field advantage.
Exactly. Okay.
For 1 game.
For 1. Okay, so that's the main thing, that home field. They got to play the game in Philadelphia. We'll talk about that. Oakland Raiders, Jaguars, Cowboys at -1, which is not bad. They're right there with the Cardinals, much less. Again, kudos to Kyler Murray and that whole crew over at the Cardinals for what they've been able to accomplish this year. And then sitting right at 0, last year's Super Bowl NFC representative, the Los Angeles Rams. Let's stop there for a minute. Just ponder the fact that they are at net 0 on the turnover differential.
Well, I mean, I don't want to ponder it too much. They didn't play well enough. They didn't play nearly as well as they did last year. Something's not quite right over there. But I have a feeling that the Rams will be one of those teams that are able to right the ship and get it back to where they were. So I don't think their fall off is going to be so terrible that it carries over into next year. They got a few things to clean up, as do most teams, but the Rams will be back.
All right. So following the Eagles in terms of their numbers and turnover differential, we have the Houston Texans also at 0. The Bears also at 0. Some teams that had better turnover differentials include, and I said Redskins, excuse me, Washington team that needs to change their name. Let's get that right. We see the Broncos tied with Washington at 1, the Colts at 2, the Niners, my Niners at 4. At least they're in the positive, and they've overcome some of that. Tied with the Buffalo Bills. I thought that was kind of interesting that you're in that neighborhood. The Titans at, 6? The Steelers are one of those teams up in that top 10 arena in turnover differential with Minkah Fitzpatrick doing his thing. Great pickup for the Steelers in the positives. And then everyone from there on up is in the playoffs. We'll stop there for a second in case you had anything to say about that group, and then we'll look more at the rest of these contenders.
Well, just the fact that these teams are all in the positive as far as turnovers is concerned is a good thing for them, especially going into the playoffs. Turnovers are one of those things that can change a game for you. and everybody's going to be looking for game-changing plays once the playoff games begin. So this is a big deal. And again, what we're doing here is turnover differential. So it's not just the turnovers that you get, it also counts the turnovers that you give away. So again, it's not just a defensive stat, it's an offensive stat. You have to be careful with the ball. You cannot fumble. Quarterbacks have to be efficient, not throw interceptions. So all that comes into play. So these teams that are on the plus side, that's a good thing for them going into these crucial postseason games.
Well, let's see how good it is here. We have the Kansas City Chiefs at +8, the Baltimore Ravens at +10, the Vikings at +11, and then we're tied for fourth and third place with the Seahawks and the Packers at +12. And I think if there's one team that a little surprises me to see them there because they're so quiet and some of the things that they've accomplished, it's the Packers.
Yeah. I mean, if we searched back and took a look at how their turnovers bore themselves out over the course of the season, I think you'll find that they were taking the ball away a little more in the beginning of the season and maybe giving it away a little bit more toward the second half. I'm not going to say I'm exactly right, but I kind of feel like they've been up near the top for most of the season because their secondary was playing pretty well early on. They've fallen on some harder times lately, and they've had trouble stopping the run, but they force a fumble now and then, and, you know, Aaron Rodgers is pretty careful with the ball. So, again, that keeps them on the plus side, and that's a good thing.
And they're right up there in the top three. Okay, so your top three include those Packers at 12. You make a 3 net turnover jump for the Saints. Got to give them that credit at, what's that, 18? 16.
16.
16. Can't see worth a darn, even with glasses. New Orleans Saints at +16. And then that team that everybody seems to want to count out, leading the league as they have pretty much all year in net turnover differential, the New England Patriots in first place with +21. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know why people are trying to count them out. Well, I do know why. Because unless you're a New England Patriots fan, you are, quote unquote, tired of the Patriots. And, you know, everybody's looking for reasons to count them out or reasons to say that the run is over, that they're not going to be great anymore, or they're on the downside and all this other stuff. But the bottom line is Brady doesn't throw picks, and their secondary is a bunch of ball hawks, and they are one of the most opportunistic teams out there. They don't – if there's a ball on the ground, they're usually going to come up with it. If you throw the ball into the myriad – why did I try to say that word? of zone coverages that they play, it's going to get picked. And the running backs in New England do not fumble, because if you fumble as a New England running back, you will probably be on the bench.
Probably, and that's a high probability.
Very high.
Let's go to the next setup that we have here. Average points for. This is scoring. All right. Back on the right-hand side, all the way to the lower right. Again, these are all positive numbers. You can't have a negative number in your points for. Starting with the Washington team that needs to change their name at 16.6 points per game. Then you move into the 17 range with the Jets, the Bengals, the Bears, the Broncos. So these are the teams that are scoring. All of these teams are scoring under 20. Let's go to the 20 point, because we know if you can't put up more than 20 points in a game, your probability of having a positive win-loss ratio is very poor. So we're looking at the Broncos, the Steelers, the Jaguars, the Dolphins, the Raiders, and the Bills all coming in at less than 20 points a game, ranging from 19.6 down to 16.6. What do you think about that group in terms of scoring?
Well, in terms of scoring, obviously they're not top-notch scoring offenses. However, you will see one playoff team in that group, and that is the Buffalo Bills. So that tells you that it is possible to score less than 20 points and still make it to the playoffs. But you'll find that when we go to points against, there will be your answer. The strength of their defense has gotten them to where they are as far as the postseason is concerned.
All right. We have, as we enter the 20 average point per game, those Cleveland Browns who underperformed. I think when you have an OBJ, you don't expect 20 points a game. You're looking at something much more, much better than that, we'll say. The Chargers, the Panthers, the Lions, and the Giants all putting up 21 points a game. And finishing up the right side of that list is the Colts at 22.6. So we've already gotten some news in terms of, well, the Panthers let their coach go. He's going to be picked up by that last place team in terms of scoring, the Washington team that needs to change their name. Who else? Let's see. The Giants, they're getting some new coaching. The Panthers, we mentioned them. Question about the Chargers, whether Phillip Rivers is going to come back. The Dolphins, I have to admit, I was very proud of the effort and some of the things that the Dolphins were able to do this year at 19.1 points per game. But that finishes up the right side. Anything on that?
Just happy to see a little scoring punch from my New York Football Giants. I think that bodes well for going into the next season as far as the offense is concerned. The draft should be very heavy on defense and also offensive line. I think they have the skill position players on offense to get things going in the right direction.
Tied with the Colts are the Arizona Cardinals at 22.6, starting off the bottom part of the left-hand side of the list. Right behind the Green Bay Packers. Now, that looks a little disappointing in terms of the Packers to be down there with the Cardinals in terms of scoring, not just down there with the Cardinals, but we're looking at the Texans, at the Falcons, at 23, under 24 points a game for that particular group. Anything on that?
Well, yeah, it's funny that group happens to be bunched together. Let's look at the quarterbacks in that group. Carson Wentz, who people are calling elite.
Well, we hadn't thrown them in there yet, but okay, if you want to include Carson.
Oh, I didn't get up to him? Okay, well, he's okay.
Let's throw him in there and include the Rams also while we're at it. They're all 24, under 25 points a game teams.
Okay, the first thing you think of when you look at LA Rams is prolific offense. Jared Goff, supposed to be up-and-comer. Carson Wentz, also an up-and-comer. Some people are saying potentially elite. Matty Ice, Matt Ryan for the Falcons, has been a great quarterback, will probably continue to be a great quarterback until he's ready to hang it up. Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson. Everybody loves Deshaun. Oh, he's so great. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. He's going to carry his team to wins even though their defense isn't that good. Aaron Rodgers. Oh, my goodness. And all these quarterbacks that people go, yeah, they're great quarterbacks. Yeah, they're at least really good quarterbacks. Yeah, maybe their teams aren't as good, but they can carry them. And sitting right below them is Kyler Murray. So we're not talking about Kyler Murray sitting around with mediocre guys. That bodes well for the Cardinals. Like you said, I was happy with the way their season went, offensively at least. We had a lot of questions about their new offense and their new coach and Kyler, and I think they handled themselves pretty nicely.
You know, I have an affinity for teams with a highly recognizable system. And, you know, my theory on that being great system plus great talent equals championships. Well, they have, they're adding some talent. I don't know if the system is great yet, but we did talk about that, them and their flexibility in terms of the one play we talked about last week where the coach admitted that, hey, we took that play from the Ravens, and they saw resemblances and what they could do relative to what the Ravens are doing, kind of the same thing. You have that mobile quarterback. And so they put that play in there and were successful with it. So not only do they have a system, but they got their eyes and ears open and they're becoming adaptable. And, for our division, I say our because I'm a Niners fan, that NFC West, that's a packed division right now, man. You can't really count many people out on that. So the Rams did them in, took care of the business with the Cardinals, but the Cardinals are a growing team. And very interestingly, from the bottom to the top, and we'll get to the top in a minute, it's only an 11-point average per game. Now that's what?
Little less than 2 touchdowns.
Little less than 2 touchdowns, a touchdown, the 2-point conversion.
Right, touchdown, field goal.
Yeah.
You're right up there.
Right on up there. So, all right, so let's get to those top 10 here. Starting with the 25-point per game group, the Titans, the Seahawks, and the Vikings, all in that 25 average points per game group right there. Anything you want to say about that group?
Well, let's see. Let my eyes scan this group very quickly. And, yeah, that's not going to be hard to deduce. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are where they are because of Jameis Winston and Jameis Winston alone. And the Dallas Cowboys are sitting where they are mostly because of Dak Prescott. I'm not going to say Dak Prescott alone because Zeke ain't done yet, but obviously that's not enough to get you to the playoffs. Everybody else in this group is in the playoffs.
Absolutely. You're looking at the 26. The Patriots at 26.2 points per game. And that's where everybody's having the problem with the Patriots because they were much closer to the top earlier on in the season. And they began to fall in terms of their scoring, finishing up at 7th place in terms of scoring overall. And for a team that has been as powerful and as, such a winning record, you're wondering, okay, what's going on? Why aren't they at the top? I have one word that I'll say as to why they're not higher. You ready?
Okay.
Gronkowski. I mean, let's face it. When you have a Gronkowski, and the closest thing to Gronkowski right now, as far as I'm concerned, is Kittle. A guy that you pretty much know when it's tight and I need a play, I can find that there's a mismatch there. He's gonna have a advantage over most linebackers, most safeties, most cornerbacks, at least in terms of size and power. And then if you can match it closely with the speed and he catches the ball, I mean, if there's one that I can't imagine, I didn't really calculate it, but think about how many points Gronk was responsible for and how many first downs, turnover downs that will go in their favor because they had a Gronkowski.
Yeah, there's a good number of really good tight ends in the league right now. And most of those guys, especially the ones on the better teams, are the guys that are responsible for those things that made Gronk famous, which was red zone touchdowns and big first downs and big plays when you really need them. So, yes, he was very much missed by New England, on top of the fact that, we love to talk about injuries on these other teams, especially here in Philadelphia. And no doubt, Philadelphia has been plagued with injuries. But the Patriots had a lot of bad luck with injuries also, especially offensively. They didn't have the 3 and 4 running backs that they could mix and match all season long. Burkhead was hurt. White's not really the runner. He's the third down guy. And Sony Michel's just kind of down this year. He's not having a really big year. And, Burkhead's back now, but they didn't really have him to mix and match with Sony Michel, on top of the fact that, receiver-wise, they've really been hurting too. So
Okay.
they had their problems.
They had their problems. Dallas Cowboys coming in a tad ahead of the Patriots. Again, that's a team that they put up 27.1, so they're in the top 10. Did not make the playoffs. Kansas City Chiefs at 28.2, then the New Orleans Saints at 28.6. Two teams that are in the playoffs. Here's our friend Jameis again in the top 3 of scoring in the entire league. I mean, you got to give them kudos for that.
And they did that. They did that basically without a running game.
Another good point. Yeah, good point. Speaking of running games here, you have the top 2, 29.9 points a game. It's just it's a little under 30 for my Niners, my beloved 49ers. Wow, it's just I'm still impressed at their ability to score and put up those points, even as their defense had some challenges in the last few games of the season. We were able to hold up against some of the top competition. We gave up some points, but we were able to put up some points. And, so I just thought that's an amazing. And then we all have to give a hand, a standing ovation, maybe even to the Baltimore Ravens for coming out with a system that they promised was going to be unique and revolutionary. And then they wind up at the top of the league and scoring at 33.2 points per game. That is amazing.
Yeah, especially when I think the original goal was to come up with a system that would make their quarterback as comfortable as possible so that he was able to really handle the offense and really make it go. I don't think even they in their wildest dreams thought that it would go the way that it's going. I try to give their coaching staff as much credit as I can week after week. I got to say it again. They really came up with something that fit this guy. And, grabbing Mark Ingram was a big deal too. They don't have a real big name wide receiver, but the guys that they have work very well with Lamar, on top of the fact that Lamar is throwing the ball lights out far better than he threw the ball last year, which is a credit to him and the work that he put in the offseason. So, over 30 points a game on average, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty prolific. This is the NFL, man. That's prolific. Teams like the Saints and Kansas City, we've seen them do that a few years now. So we kind of expect them, if they're playing at their best, to be up in that range. But for the Ravens to do it, we all go, oh, yeah, well, they got Lamar. Nobody knew in the beginning of the season that offense would be this prolific. And they could not have done it on the ground alone. No doubt their running game is spectacular, but they could not have averaged over 30 points a game without the improvement of their passing game. And most of that credit goes to the coaching staff and to the work that Lamar put in to make himself a better passer.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Okay. Offense sells tickets. Defense wins championships. At least that's what I think you pretty much kind of feel that same way to some degree.
I agree.
All right. Average points against. Here's our 32 team list here. The team with the giving up the most is in last place. That is the Miami Dolphins. Right behind them is the Carolina Panthers. That's the little bit of surprise because the Panthers we always think about as a defensive-minded team. Your Giants coming in at 28.2 points per game. There's the Tampa Bay, the negative side of the Tampa Bay Bucks, giving up 28.1. You have your Cardinals giving up 27. Your Washington team giving up 27. The Lions at 26, along with the Bengals and the Raiders. Falcons and the Seahawks on that right side. There's your Seahawks giving up 24.9 points per game. Browns, and it's funny, they're behind the Jaguars, the Browns, the Texans, the Colts, and the Rams. They better get that bet together before they come to Philadelphia. They're not going to be able to. 24, I don't know, 24 points. You give up 24 points against the Eagles, you probably lose. What do you think?
If they give up 24 points against the Eagles here in Philly, they will either lose the game or they will be successful on a last-minute drive to win the game.
Russell's going to have to come up with some miracle stuff.
He's been known to do that, but they can't have any coaching mishaps like they had last week.
I loved it.
Yeah, I'm sure you loved it.
I loved it. Let's move that thing back a little bit from the 1 centimeter line that it was sitting on.
A delay a game, though. A delay a game. The guy catches the ball. They spot it on the 1, and they have to discuss whether or not they're going to put Marshawn Lynch in the game. It took them that long to get their, what some teams call their jumbo offense in, so they could just plow it over from the 1 and be done with it, and they get a delay of game penalty. That's absurd.
And what down was that?
I don't remember. What down was it?
It was first.
It was first down. It was first down. So let me say to you, again, as you see in the back, can't see it. Looks like my Madden thing took a dive there. But I'm the Madden guy here. And I can tell you, if you're playing someone in Madden and they come up, they land at the 1 foot line or the 1 yard line, they're coming right back to the line of scrimmage in a hurry up. The Eagles did it last week and scored. So they've been watching a little bit of Madden too. They came, you got to be able to get right back. You don't need, beast mode at that point. You need a good push and to catch that defense not ready, not set up, where they come out, they're trying to get ready, and while they're trying to adjust to what your formation is, bam. Yeah, that's it. That's the part I forgot. As soon as you said that, I remembered it. They ran up to the line and got ready and spiked the ball. They spiked the ball to bring him in. When they could have tried a quarterback sneak, don't get it, call timeout, then put him in.
You got Russell.
Yeah, you're right. They, here we go again, outthinking yourself,
Amazing.
That's all they did there. But, amazing. They can still win giving up 24.9. Let's face it, they're in the playoffs. And that's an end of the season stat. So,
well, when you look at the next column over on the left-hand side, we have the Jets at 22 and the Eagles at 22. So if the Seahawks are giving up 24 and the Eagles only giving up 22, that don't bode well for the Seahawks either. Your Chargers, your Saints at 21, your Titans at 20, and your Cowboys at 20. Slightly better than that, the Broncos, Packers, my Niners, and the Chiefs all at 19 points per game. Let's stop there for a second, and let's make sure that we give a little kudos to the Chiefs defense coming in 7th. I believe that's an improvement for them, especially over last year. What do you think?
I'd say that's quite an improvement over last year and could make the difference for them if they're able to not if they're able to. They got the bye, and they have home field thanks to the Miami Dolphins and their win over the Patriots last week. That's a big deal for them. Andy Reid needs to be sending Brian Flores a nice Christmas gift, a nice belated Christmas gift for that, because if the Patriots have to go to Kansas City, it's a big difference between the Chiefs having to go to New England going there. So on top of that, with the improved defense, that's a good thing for Kansas City. That bolsters their chances at getting to the Super Bowl if that were to happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, number 6, you have the Vikings and the Steelers. Vikings defense has been pretty good all year. Steelers, you got to give them kudos for being there. The Bears at 18.6, all in that 18-point range. Those are some of the top teams defensively. Your top 3 being your Ravens. The Bills coming in number 2 defensively this year, and look at who's number 1 right in their division. Don't you hate it when you're like really, really good in one particular season and you're like, oh, we're really good. And there's like that one team that's just a little bit better.
And they're in your division. I almost feel sorry for the Bills because, the good thing for the Bills is if they can keep this going, regardless of how the season ends for them, and they have as good a chance as anybody to do well in the playoffs, I would say. But no matter how the season ends for them, they're going to come in on a nice little roll next season if they make the proper improvements and have a good draft, this, that, and the other. This could be a time where they're positioning themselves to start to be able to rule that division or at least fight for that division lead if, in fact, the Patriots are on the downside. And you never know when the Patriots are really on the downside because we've tried to count them out in seasons before, and then they get in the postseason and everything goes right for them and they're back in the stinking Super Bowl again. And then they're in the Super Bowl and it looks like they're going to lose and they have the greatest comeback ever, or somebody runs a dumb play or something and they end up winning it again. So you can't stick a fork in them yet. But now is as good a time as any for somebody in that division to step up and say, if you guys slip, we're ready to take over. That would be the Buffalo Bills.
Well, you're absolutely right in terms of that. I mean, it looks as if, again, no Gronkowski. So when the Patriots' butts is in the fire, who are they going to be able to depend on to pull them out? I mean, again, comparing them to Kittles, my Niners, you get that one big play from Kittles. Next thing you know, you're in field goal range and you can win the game, So
right.
That's what the Gronkowski had been doing for them all of these years, and he's not there right now. So to wrap this up, the pièce de résistance, the number that we take the most as a part of what we're looking at, your average net points. That's your points for minus your points against. And I wanted to make sure, again, I included the playoff indicators for net points. First thing we'll notice, let me count them off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We will notice that on the right-hand side, where we have all negative numbers from number 17 ranking down to 32, no playoff contenders over there. You might show those indicators for defense, for offense, for that one side, but when you put it all together, you can't be in the negative and make the playoffs in the NFL. That doesn't work that well, and that's why we like the net point power rankings, the Sterling net point power ranking. Let's look at 16. Those stinking LA Chargers, I don't trust them guys worth a darn. I said that all along. But right above them is the only team in the playoffs with a negative net point number, and that is the Houston Texans.
Oh, negative 0.4, yes. But it is a negative.
Right on the other side of your Seattle Seahawks, and they're pretty close to negative.
Oh, no, that's a positive.
But it's positive.
Only 0.4, but it's a positive. Woo!
And I'm sure the Texans can thank the Ravens for that negative number, because the Ravens put the spank on those guys big time.
Yeah, that was a bad loss. That probably pushed them into the negative.
That pushed, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. Seattle's been playing it close all year, so it doesn't quite surprise me. Tampa Bay being in the positive, that's awesome. The Rams being in the positive, that's expected, but it wasn't enough. Same net numbers as the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in the positive. And let's just jump up real quick and exclude number 6, the Dallas Cowboys at 7.1. That's a plus number. Again, this is a stat with both plus and minus. The only team in the top 10 with a plus number, not in the playoffs. And that's thanks to the Philadelphia Eagles getting it done in their game. So let's stop there for a minute in case you have something you want to throw out on that.
Okay, real fast. Dallas Cowboys, this is what happens to you when you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat all the teams that you play with losing records, and beat them handily and look super impressive, and then turn around and lose to every team that has a winning record. They did beat somebody that was 500, but we won't count that. So you lose to every team that not necessarily you're supposed to lose to, but every team that has a winning record, and get handled by them. You end up with a nice power ranking at the end and no postseason.
Crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, let's look at those top teams. Here we go. 10, Buffalo Bills plus 3.4. 9, Green Bay Packers plus 3.9. 8, Tennessee Titans 4.4. 7, Minnesota Vikings 6.5. And we already talked about the Dallas Cowboys. So 6 through 10, not real impressive numbers there for these teams. They're going to be, some of them got to buy. Packers got to buy. But everybody else is playing in the wild card there.
Well, I think it's pretty easy to see that the teams that are top 5 are all considered Super Bowl contenders and could possibly win it. If you polled 100 people, it would probably almost be equal as to the number of people that thought each of those top 5 could actually go all the way. All their names have been mentioned by the pundits on television as being their favorites to go all the way. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot. And when you really look at it from this perspective, the Vikings, the Titans, the Packers, the Bills, and the Eagles are all going to be hard-pressed to get to the Super Bowl. I would be totally shocked if any of those teams made it to the Super Bowl. And I got to include the Seahawks and the Texans in that too. The top 5 teams are just too strong.
Weakest of those top 5 coming in terms of net points, the Saints and the Chiefs. Chiefs defense is better. The Chiefs struggling in net points because their defenses had not been that great. You had the short period where Mahomes was out. They were still scoring, but not necessarily, walloping teams, dominating teams. Your top 3 in the double digits, my beloved San Francisco 49ers, and we might wind up losing our defensive coach. He's taking interviews now, Mr. Saleh. The Patriots, who everybody wants to count out here, coming in second with 12.2 points per game, and the number 1 team at 15.6 points per game, being the Baltimore Ravens. And if there was any skew to the Ravens, is probably what they did to the Dolphins early on, where they beat the Dolphins in the next year. And it's just, I think they kind of threw a notice out to the rest of the league that we better watch who are these Ravens guys that just finished beating the Dolphins.
Yeah, right. And a lot of good it did, because they continued to run through the rest of the league pretty handily. So, you can be warned, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, that's true too. That's like saying, hell, there's a guy coming down the street with a big stick.
Right. So now it's like, do I get a bigger stick? I can't run. You can't run. So do I get a bigger stick? Do I work on my Tai Chi? Should I run and get a gun? Oh, I don't have a gun. Oh, and the next thing you know, he's beating you over the head. Ravens.
I'm telling you. And they even won with their second string with Bobby Griffin.
Yeah, he wasn't very impressive though.
I know. There's a bit of sparkle missing from that offense without Lamar.
It's more than a bit. It's more than a bit. That was his chance to shine a little bit, man. He didn't do it.
Well, you know, when you're, again, it's really hilarious. New Year's Eve, we had company, our 30th wedding anniversary. We talked about all that. But my little nephew, he's like 10 years old over here, and we're sitting down playing some Madden. So after I forget who did he play with first. I forget who we played with first. And after I shut him out there, he said, okay, I know what to do. And he pulls up the Ravens. I'm like, oh, snap. Now I got it. And he knew how to run all those little options and little fakes, and he's looking left and running right. And, you know, I can imagine in real life with that guy coming at you and you knowing you can't lean left or right, because whichever way you go, he's just going to go right past you. And that's just a game that nobody else can duplicate. It's just really difficult to duplicate something like that. All right. Any last words on our power rankings?
No, I think everything looks good. And again, anybody in the playoffs right now obviously can be a team that can make it to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to say win the Super Bowl, but can make it to the Super Bowl. But I guess when we get into our next segment, we'll talk about that.
All right, that wraps up the power rankings portion of the show. Next up, we'll do a review of last week's game. That's week 17, the final week of the regular season in 2019. Okay, so in this portion of the show, we're going to talk about week 17 of the 2019 season, the final week of the regular season. We'll do an abbreviated review because, well, again, last week being the last game of the season, there were a lot of teams who were pretty much out of it. And, you know, so their games were inconsequential relative to the playoffs. But then there were some games where you had some teams who had to fight to get into the playoffs all the way down to the last minute. And we're going to focus a little bit more on some of those games where people were required to actually get out there and play and not necessarily sit their starters. So, Ben, let's start out with actually what was the final game of the 2019 regular season. And man, what a game it was. Can you see that Bias Plus report for week 17 there?
Yes, I can.
San Francisco Niners at Seattle Seahawks with a Bias Plus score, 9.6 favoring the Niners. And you went against the bias.
Oh, jeez. You're going to remind me of that. Yes, absolutely. I did.
Right up front.
Well, you know, my thinking on that was that the Seahawks had a little bit more to play for, although both teams had spots clinched. And I figured that on top of the fact that they were at home were probably be enough to get them over. But I was incorrect. The bias was for the 49ers. It was 9.6 points. They actually won by 5 points. So, again, net point power rankings almost right on the money. The reason I want to talk about this game is because both teams are going into the playoffs. One of them has to play in the wild card round. That's the Seahawks. But these are the things to look out for as both teams, I think, closed out the season very impressively. First of all, the 49ers going to be very, very dangerous in a game that didn't mean a whole heck of a lot for them. Jimmy Garoppolo was a very efficient 18 for 22 for 285 yards. You may say, 285, that's pretty good. It's almost 300. Did he throw for any touchdowns? No, he didn't. Why? Because he didn't have to. The passes he completed kept the chains moving, and gave enough change of pace to a very strong running game, which is now headed up by Raheem Mostert. He had 10 carries for 57 yards, but he scored 2 touchdowns. So a very balanced attack on top of the fact that they have a really good defense. The 49ers are going to have to be reckoned with. It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough out there for whoever has to play them. The Seahawks, however, although they've had some disappointing losses, are right where they feel they need to be as far as, as good as they can be at this point, considering some of the injuries that they've had and the difficulties they've had on defense. Russell Wilson was 25 for 40 for 233, which wasn't great, but he did throw 2 touchdown passes. The running game was about as balanced as you can be, considering that they lost their top 3 running backs and had to go and bring Marshawn Lynch back. Ran the ball 12 times. He only had 34 yards, but he did score a touchdown. And Travis Homer, who basically nobody knew anything about, only had 10 carries, but got 62 yards. So their running game is still good enough, I think. It's barely good enough, but it's still good enough to make the difference between a balanced attack and having to lean excessively on Russell Wilson. So I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. The only question with the Seahawks is the defense.
All right. Yes. Questioning that Seahawks defense there. Davion Clowney is back. It's going to be interesting to see how he reacts. We'll talk about that in the next section on the bias. Okay. Next up, we have Tennessee Titans at Houston Texans. Bias plus score 2.6. I mean, you're talking a net of under 3 net points per game differential between those two teams, but it favored the Tennessee Titans.
And boy, did they go to work on the Texans. And I've been talking about the Titans all season, a little bit in the negative in the beginning of the season, but as soon as Ryan Tannehill came aboard, I jumped on the bandwagon, and he did not disappoint. In fact, he finished the season with the NFL's best passer rating, if you can believe that. Number 1 passer rating, Ryan Tannehill. On top of that, Derrick Henry led the league in rushing, and he's catching the ball out of the backfield a little bit more than he did before. So the Titans are going to have to be reckoned with. The defense isn't as strong as it's been in the past, but it's pretty strong. If you look back at our other segment that we did, the Tennessee Titans are going to be very tough.
All right. Next up, New Orleans Saints at Carolina Panthers. Bias plus score. Now that's a nice hefty score of 13.7 favoring the Saints.
Right. This game, on the surface, you're probably saying, why are we talking about this game? I'm not going to really talk about the game itself, except for the fact that Drew Brees came in, went to work, 19 for 30, only 253, but he threw 3 touchdown passes. You can't keep the Saints out of the end zone. It's going to be hard to keep the Saints out of the end zone. I could talk about Alvin Kamara, but he didn't have a lot of yards. He did score 2 touchdowns, and he had a couple of really big runs. The Saints are starting to gather momentum right at the exact right time. So, again, team that's going to have to be reckoned with. And just some kudos to Christian McCaffrey. He broke 1,000 yards running and 1,000 yards receiving, which puts him in great company with Marshall Faulk and I think Roger Craig. That's great company right there.
My Niners.
Yes, sir.
Let me say this much. I went back and was looking at the replay, and 2 things that came up. Number 1, Drew Brees reminds me, we talk about the quarterback as point guard, the distributor.
Absolutely.
And he's a great point guard.
Yes, he is.
Off the top of your head, tell me a great point guard that comes to your mind that kind of you you could compare to say that's kind of Drew Brees like, or Drew
John
Brees.
Stockton.
Stockton would be a great one.
That was easy. That was easy.
Stockton is a great one. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you don't expect Stockton to. Now, Stockton could score.
Yes.
You know, he could score, but you know, his ability to run that offense, to run that team is what is Drew Brees like, and definitely. Now, the only caveat, I'm listening to the game. After Alvin Kamara scored the first quarter, it was about 10 minutes and 30 seconds left. The announcers questioned the effort of the Carolina Panthers and basically said, you got to do better than that. that run that Kamara, they ran up and they were like, they looked like they were making some business decisions. So that kind of throws you off, and you know how battle tested you are if the other team is like kind of, you know, not really giving it their best effort. But the Saints are the Saints, you know, and we expect them to be competitive. Just, you know, I don't know how much you can put on that last game. So
no, well, like I said, he didn't have a big yardage total, but he was able to break off some runs. And let's face it, the Panthers defense has been getting hammered by every running game in the league. So, I mean, at that point, they were probably like, you know what? Come on, man. They've really been getting hammered on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, all right. So what did you have next? You were talking about the Eagles. Am I correct? All right, let's go to that Eagle game and take a quick look at it. All right, there you go. Bias Plus report, Eagles at Giants. Bias Plus score 7.8 favored the Eagles.
So I took the Giants, and I watched the game in a bar full of Eagles fans. And for 3 quarters, I was feeling like a genius. For almost 3 whole quarters, I was feeling like a genius. And then the fumble happened. And then the landslide began. So now, once again, for the 4th or 5th week in a row, Carson Wentz goes into the 4th quarter and somehow puts the team on his back and gets the job done. But for the majority of the game, they were looking really mediocre. He was only 23 out of 40. He ended up with 289 yards and 1 touchdown pass. And I don't have the exact number, but I know he threw for over 4,000 yards this year, which is a big deal considering all the wide receiver problems that they had this year. So kudos to Carson Wentz for that. Seahawks, don't let it be close in the 4th quarter. That's all I can tell you. The big hero, however, for the Eagles was this Boston Scott guy. Holy smokes. He only ran for 54 yards, but he scored 3 touchdowns and had 6 catches for 84 yards. Wow. If Miles Sanders is somehow healthy, again, Seahawks, you're going to have your hands full. Just those 2 guys alone, and they didn't even play Jordan Howard. This could be a problem.
Interestingly, I was watching some breakdown of film. Our friend Nate Burleson on Good Morning Football was real all over Carson and how successful he been. Now, number one, we talked about Boston Scott weeks ago when we said that the coach went into the lab and created a Sproles clone. That's Boston Scott. And the one play that they brought up about him, he had a nice screen pass where he caught the ball over his shoulders and really gave it to him. And yeah, he is an exciting addition. Number 2, they were talking about some of the throws that Carson made, had some really good anticipation. He had one throw in the end zone for a touchdown where they ran across like this, and he threw it to the man on this side. I forget his name. Again, one of the lesser-known people, caught it for the touchdown. But the Giants were in like a 3-deep zone. And I'm wondering why the guy on that side wasn't on that side when he crossed over into that area. A disciplined defense is not going to give up their zone.
Yeah, if you're playing zone, you can't chase like that.
You can't chase. You can't run to the middle of the field. You got a guy already there, you
Right.
know. So
Right.
they're going to have to, it's one thing when you beat the Giants in that defense and you feel good about yourself, et cetera, et cetera. It's another thing when you're coming up against a disciplined defense, and when they're in that zone, they're where they're supposed to be. So
Right.
we're going to see how they fare against more disciplined teams. You mentioned 4,000-yard passing for Wentz. That's in relationship to no receiver having more than 500 yards receiving. And that in and of itself is a crazy, crazy analysis. And you mentioned something that just, we didn't talk about the Giants game, the Jets game, but I did want to mention, I did watch a little bit of that. And it was funny. They were just finished giving kudos to the quarterback for the Jets.
Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold.
They love Darnold. I can't with this guy.
Wait. No, I'm wrong. The Bills. That's who it was.
Oh, okay.
It was the same game, right?
Josh Allen, yeah.
Josh Allen. So apparently Josh Allen had a bad game earlier in the season, threw like 3 interceptions or something like that. They interviewed him after the game and like the next week, and he had a better game. And he said something to the effect of, I stopped trying to throw touchdowns and started throwing first downs.
Okay.
That kind of stuck in my, I like that, because I had just heard someone say who was in the draft recruiting genre that, a quarterback's first job is to get first downs.
Okay.
So I'm looking at him on the one play. It's like 2nd and 10. He snaps the ball. 4 receivers curl up underneath. The defense falls back into a shell with 2 deep safeties, and he throws a deep sideline pass. And I'm like, dude, you got 4 people open underneath. I thought you would just said you're going to be throwing first downs. So those tendencies for these young quarterbacks are hard to break. So I just wanted to mention that. Keep an eye out on that, because some of these guys, it made me wonder how many of these great catches that we see were totally unnecessary, because there were 3 guys open on an easy throw and catch. But
yeah,
he threw the ball that had a 3% chance, and the guy caught it, and now he's being plastered across all of the highlight films. And we're like, oh, great throw, great catch, great. And there was 3 guys standing there by themselves in the end zone or something stupid like that. So I just wanted to kind of mention that real quick. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay, so those are the games that we wanted to talk about relative to the previous season, or the previous week. Any last words on that?
No, I'm done with that.
All right, we're going to get ready to wrap up the review portion here and move on to the Buyers Plus report for Wild Card Weekend. Yes. All right, so Ben, we're getting ready to do the Buyers Plus report for Wild Card Weekend. We had a quick conversation before we started recording, and you talked about it, and the song, one of our favorite groups came up in my mind, Parliament Funkadelic. Here's my chance to dance my way out of my confliction. That's where you are, eh?
That's where I am right now.
That's how it is right here.
I tell you what, it's only 4 games, bro. So I got to win 3 of them.
You got to win 3, or your percentages are starting to stink. Last week, we didn't mention it when we did the review, but last week my percentage was 62?
62, and I was like 59.
Right. Neither one of us. Well, again, my numbers are unmanaged, so they are what they are. I don't feel good or bad about them one way or the other. However, it is interesting because, again, certain things you can't account for. It's difficult when you're looking at net points to account for teams sitting their starters, for example.
Right. I knew this last week was going to be tough, but I was still disappointed. But I picked a little freer than I would have. But the seasons, this hasn't been a good season for me picking, but that's another story.
All right, all right. Well, here's my chance to dance my way out of my confliction. Buffalo Bills at Houston Texans. Bias plus score 7.8 favors Buffalo over the Texans. Now, we talked about the point guard as quarterback previously, where you kind of compared Drew Brees to
John Stockton.
Well, here we have Deshaun Watson. Not exactly the point guard in that same vein, more of a Mr. Magic Man, where, again, we might not be as efficient, but somehow he tends to pull stuff out. This year, however, they got smacked around a little bit. So the Buffalo Bills look like the more solid team going into this game.
Oh, well, the Bills have the bias, as they should. I would say that they are the more balanced offense. They are by far the better defense in points against and probably in turnover differential as well. That being said, Deshaun Watson is still extremely dangerous. But over the course of the last few weeks, it's been shown that he's most dangerous when Will Fuller plays. Will Fuller has been out, and that has hurt them. Kenny Stills is a good receiver, but he ain't Will Fuller. And Hopkins can't do it all by himself, especially with a mediocre running game. Now, I don't know if Fuller's going to be a full go yet. It's only Thursday, so they still have today's practice and I guess tomorrow's walkthrough. Do they play on Saturday?
AFC Saturday.
Oh, that's right. We did say that. So they're playing on Saturday. So if Fuller plays, I still like the Bills. I'm going to say I'm picking the Bills to win the game, but it'll be a much better game if Fuller plays, and the Texans will have a better chance if Fuller plays. But I really think that the Bills, if they are able to run the ball like I think they will be able to, even with J.J. Watt there, because J.J. Watt's a pass rusher, let's face it, and they're going to try their best to win this game as much as they can on the ground. So if Josh Allen can do even a little tiny Lamar Jackson imitation, the Bills should be able to control the ball, control the clock, control the scoreboard, win the game.
Okay, going with the bias on this one. All righty, I ain't mad at you. Here we go. What's up next? Tennessee Titans at New England Patriots. Look at the size of the bias plus 22.8 favors the Patriots. And here comes Derrick Henry motoring down the middle of the field.
So here comes the league rushing leader and the quarterback with the best passer rating in the league.
Oh, okay. That's right. He did.
Rolling in. So all the gaudy statistics, including our power ranking statistics that the Patriots have put up, are in danger. I'm not going to second guess myself on this one because I'm still second guessing myself on another game. So I'm just going to let this one fly. Yes, that's right. I'm taking the Tennessee Titans.
Okay.
You look at me like, you give me that look like, all right, dude, why?
And it's funny because, again, number one in turnover differential, Patriots. Number one on defense, Patriots.
True.
You know, experience, Patriots.
True.
Quarterback rating may go to the Titans. I don't know how much I'm going to put on that one.
This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you back to the Patriots' undefeated season when the Giants beat them in the Super Bowl. The reason the Giants beat them in the Super Bowl because they got hot at the right time. And I'm telling you, Tennessee is cooking right now. And they don't have to wait to the Super Bowl to get to them or go through anybody else to get to them. They can get to them right now. They are ripe for the picking. They're coming off of that Dolphins loss, which they tried to win that game. Things just didn't work out for them, and they were home. I'm telling you, man, this is the one.
Interestingly, you mentioned the Dolphins. I actually went back to remind myself what happened last year when the Patriots lost to the Dolphins.
Yeah, it was a trick play, though. This time, they rolled down the field on them boys.
They had some Fitz magic going for them. That's as good as
absolutely.
The trick play.
Oh, real fast on Fitz magic. You know, he's the only quarterback to have beaten the Patriots when quarterbacking 3 different teams.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, he beat him as a Dolphin. He beat him as a Texan, I want to say. And I think he beat him as a Jet.
Wow. Well, we talked about how strange that game always is.
Right.
That's a division game. It always just gets weird. It just gets weird. What can I tell you? All right. Next up, Minnesota Vikings going into the Dome in New Orleans. Kirk Cousins, big chance. He couldn't get it done on Monday night, but the Bias Plus score 4.8 favors the New Orleans Saints. And Dalvin Cook, is he back?
I believe Dalvin Cook will be back. I can check on that real fast, but
you go ahead. I'll check on that real quick.
Okay. So Dalvin Cook being back will be a really good thing for the Vikings. And the fact that this game will be played on Sunday instead of on Monday is probably a really good thing for Kirk Cousins. He didn't have to play last week, so he's rested and he's ready and all that other good stuff. But the Saints are in the Superdome, and the Saints hardly ever lose in the Superdome. In fact, of all the playoff games that they've played there, and there's been a few, they may have only lost once or maybe twice. I think the Saints are on more of a roll than the Vikings are. I think they have the more balanced offense. They definitely have the better offensive line. That's a weakness for the Vikings. And I would say that their defense is playing better and the Vikings defense is a little bit down. And this is all generally speaking. You know, I'm not trying to quote numbers or anything. This is just the eyeball test and the way I'm feeling about the last few games that each team played. I am very, very confident on this one. I like the Saints. Not to mention revenge. They've been holding on to that Minneapolis miracle. I mean, Cousins wasn't even the quarterback then, and they are still talking about it. So this is their chance to really do something about it in a meaningful game.
Dalvin Cook is not on the injury report as of this point.
Okay, that's good for them.
Interestingly, though, for the Saints, Eli Apple, questionable. Michael Thomas, questionable. Is he?
I don't care about Eli Apple. That's what they got Jackrabbit for. So they're just as good and just as bad as each other. So they're both ex-Giants. I mean, you couldn't get any closer except for Jenkins's hair is longer. So I mean, that's not a difference. Thomas, that's maintenance. They want him as healthy as he can be.
Okay. All right. So you picked who?
Saints.
You got the Saints going with the bias.
Yes.
So is this your conflicted game coming up here? Is this the game that you're going to have to dance your way out of your confliction? The Seattle Seahawks at the Philadelphia Eagles. Look at this situation, Mr. Dickerson, because we don't see this too often. The Bias Plus score favors the Seahawks at 13.5. However, when we work up the numbers, all right, for this game, on a net point basis, it favored the Eagles at a small number. And I was looking for it. I don't see it right here. It
I think you said it was
was
like a 1 point something.
1.5. Yes.
And I can believe that. They're pretty equal.
However, in the turnover differential, Seahawks on a gross number, the bias went to the Seahawks at 15, plus 15 in the Seahawks' favor. And when you
Plus 15.
combine that 1.5 and that 15, that's where you get that 13.5 bias plus score favoring the Seahawks. So this looks like if the Eagles can control their turnovers, they got a shot to win this game. But that's what it's going to, quite possibly going to come down to, especially with all of these new guys. And, that Seahawks ain't exactly the Legion of Boom, but they can still got a little boom, much less they got a little bit of juice now. Beast Mode did not have a bad game. He got stuffed on fourth down one time when they thought he was going to be able to come in and beast mode somebody. But I told you, we got dogs over at the Niners, boy. You just ain't coming in, bullying them guys like that. However, he had a nice, productive day. So they said that after the game, he was not too well. He was good, not really injured, didn't have a lot of soreness or whatever. So he came out of that game with the Niners somewhat healthy, and it's going to be interesting to see. I'm sure if whoever the Eagles are who has tickets, it's going to be kind of a historical game because who knows, who will get to see Beast Mode ever again in the Seahawks uniform.
Wow. Yeah. I think the only problem he had was he was a little gassed. He was asking for oxygen on the sideline. I caught a little audio of that. But he was kind of laughing about it, and there was some Skittles down at his feet. So I don't that might have had something to do with it. But yeah, I think other than not being in football cardio shape, he looked like he was pretty good, and he did show some flashes. To pick this game, I can only go back and look at the last couple of games that each of the teams had. And I'll say this. I'm going to look back just 1 week for the Seahawks. They played a good game against the 49ers, a team that potentially could be in and win the Super Bowl. They had an opportunity to win that game, and it was a hard-fought game. And they had some coaching mishaps, I'll call them, at the end of the game. Otherwise, perhaps they pull out the victory. The Eagles, on the other hand, I can go back 4 weeks on them against subpar teams, and they struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled, and then had fourth quarter heroics to pull the game out. Now, there's something to be said for fourth quarter heroics, especially if they come from your quarterback. But who's the master of fourth quarter comebacks? Russell Wilson, okay? He's the master of it, and he's done it against far better competition than the Philadelphia Eagles and far better competition than what Mr. Wentz had to do it against, namely the Washington team that needs to change their name and the New York Football Giants. And I can't even remember who the heck else.
I think they got to play the Redskins like twice.
Yeah, so
Excuse me.
That's
the Washington team.
I'm not impressed. Yeah, I'm just I can't I am impressed, and I gave Wentz his kudos, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm hating on the guy. He did what he had to do to win the games they had to win to get themselves in this position. However, the Seahawks are still a better team. The turnover thing could rear its ugly head for the Eagles. That could be the difference. The time is ideal because it's the late game for the Seahawks.
Right, from the West Coast
to the East. The longest trip. They have to make the longest trip from West Coast to East Coast, but it's not an early game, so that negates that. I'm telling you, man, maybe I'm the jinx. Maybe I'm the one every time I go against the Eagles, they win. We'll find out. but I got to go with the Seahawks on this. And I have been very conflicted about this. I'm dancing. I'm trying to dance my way out of my conflictions.
Oh, I can't wait till Desiree sees that.
I'm trying to dance my way out of my conflictions, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing to have such a great showing with your practice squad backups and coming in and beating the Giants and beating Washington and pulling it out and, you know, saving the day and everything. It's another thing to do that with your backups against top competition. And that's what they're going to have to do. So this is going to be an extremely interesting game. Okay. Only 4 games that we had to really go over in the Bias Plus report. We're finishing that out right now. Let's quickly turn it over. We normally do some level of commentary or whatever before we wrap it up, and I know you don't have a lot of time. So we're going to only do a couple things. Number one, let's wish everybody a happy, healthy 2020. Wishing you love, peace, and I did steal this from the old Soul Train line. Love, peace, and soul for 2020. In addition to that, I did have one article that I shared, and I just, you know, I'm the nerd here, the math nerd, no doubt about it. But I did want to mention. Oh, this was hilarious. Okay, all right. I'm going to show this real quick. It's just a real quick thing for a quick laugh. Here we go. Found this on Instagram and reshared it. Kirk Cousins, last night was rough, but thanks to all the fans that stayed loyal, I'm still learning. Tom Brady posts, it's all a learning process. It comes with time. You'll get there. By your age, I only had like 3 Super Bowl rings. Oh, I had to share that.
Man.
It was cold, but it was
cold.
It was, yes, it was cold. No doubt about it. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And so I definitely had to share that. Okay. Last but not least, final share for the evening. Wanted to mention, I saw this article here, and I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. How mathematicians are trying to make the NFL schedule fairer.
Oh, geez.
They said they calculated. Now, let me see if I can say that. There are more possible NFL schedules, 10 to the 300th power, than in a given year than there are atoms in the universe at 10 to the 80th power.
What? Come on.
Yeah, they got the MITs and the PhDs and everybody trying to figure. And apparently this came out of Buffalo because Buffalo found out that when they looked at years and years of schedules and found out they had like 3 road games like year after year after year when it came to the playoffs. So they kind of had a bias against them on and on and on. And so they were kind of motivated to say, okay, look, something's going on here. How can we make them better? So there's big money now being, made. We had those conversations earlier about even, whether or not those teams like the Eagles should get that bye and get all of that favor relative to that when they had like the worst record. And there were teams that had much better records that didn't even get into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's going to come up in the CBA or something somewhere along the line again. But I mean, it is what it is, man. If you win your division, that's why they have divisions. That's why they have what they call it, hat and shirt day. Then you get the little hat that says you won your division in your T-shirt. That's why they have that. I mean,
all right.
Off the top of my head real quick, because I got to get ready to go, but off the top of my head real fast, if a division winner has to play a wild card team and the wild card team has the better record, they should make the division winner go on the road. I don't see
Okay.
anything wrong with that.
Okay. All right. All right.
You know what I mean? You won your division, that got you in. But that's all you get, buddy.
You got
You
in.
get in, which is the main goal, right? But if your record sucks, then, or if your record, I'm not gonna say sucks, but if your record is worse than the team that you have to play, you should go to their field.
Absolutely. 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 Okay. Well, I don't have any game to report on because I had a bye week in my, again, I follow the schedule with my Niners and Madden. I beat the Seahawks. I got the bye. Let me mention that the game, and this is kind of scary, has already named the team that I have to play because we simulated the wild card week, and I will be playing the Packers next week.
Ah, that's a win. That's a win.
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. Okay. Well, that wraps up Ben and Barry on football for January. What's today's date? The 2nd?
January
January
2nd.
2nd, 2020. Any last words, Mr. Dickerson?
Go Knowles.
Go nose. Excellent. All right. All right.